Hey guys, I'm going to show you how to assemble your bridge in Inventor. Some of you this might be easy and you can just jump right in, but I know we've got some people that never took Introduction to Engineering and Design and are still really kind of finding their way through Inventor. So once you've created multiple part files, we can use an assembly file, a different file type. So you can access it here. You can also access it by saying File New, and then choosing an assembly file right here, and we're going to use the standard. So either way will get you here. Create. An assembly file, think of it as 3D space where we can bring parts into, where they're going to kind of float around like in space. And we have to kind of lock them together using constraint tools. So we have to bring them in first. And if you didn't already download, I am crafting this email, which you'll have by the time you'd be watching this video, where I did reattach the parts that you didn't create yourself, the bridge deck and the deck rails. It doesn't really matter which part you bring in first, but maybe the deck would be one we could bring in first. So you could make sure it's downloaded. You really should have all of your parts organized in a single folder. Okay, so then I go to this place component. You don't want to hit the little bottom part, otherwise it's a drop down. You want to just be on place, and then you're clicking the top part of the button. And if you click the top part of the button, see how it's two parts? It just starts to execute that. Now you have to know where your folder is, where you've stored your stuff. So I've got to kind of walk through my folders. It's in POE, Unit 2, Statics, and I have Inventor Truss Parts. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the bridge deck. I'll do that first. Okay, I'm going to say open. Now with the very first piece, this is the important thing. Let me rotate my view cube so you can see three-dimensionally. The very first piece, I am going to right-click to put it in here. And when I right-click, I get options, and I'm going to choose Place Grounded at Origin. This is the only one that we're going to do this with. Okay, you'll notice that over here there's a little white push pin on the first part. Okay, if you didn't, I'm going to delete this one, but if you left-click, you've placed that component into the file. Notice I can have two parts. When I'm done, I right-click and say OK, and it stops, wanting to put more of those pieces in. You can see that the second one where I left click does not have the white push pin. The difference is if I left click and hold on this and move my mouse, it's movable in space. If I try to do the same thing with this one, so a left click and hold and then try to move my mouse, I can't drag it in space. It is stuck. It is grounded. For the very first piece, that's what we want. We want the first one stuck in place. The others will get kind of stuck in place in a different manner. We do want them to eventually not float, but they will come in and be able to float until we get them aligned to the grounded pieces. Okay, so this piece I can delete it by coming right over here. You can see if I hover, it highlights. I'm going to right click and find delete. Okay, now let's see, could be good too to kind of be showing you how we're going to glue this together as well. So let's go ahead and bring in, I'll bring in two deck rails, 1, 2, and then let's bring in the truss. So I'm just left clicking to place them, right click OK. Notice if I left click and hold and I move my mouse, I can spin these around. Okay. Alright, the way this is going to assemble is this deck rail, that long skinny piece, is actually going to glue onto the side of the truss like that. That is going to create this little shelf that the deck itself will then rest on. Okay, so the load on the deck is really going to transfer to the truss kind of via this piece. It's going to be on here, and all right, since this will be glued all the way across, it'll be kind of more become one, and we're going to load it right in the middle. So notice I just kind of moved that part and got it close, but I want them to be stuck together. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to come over here to the relationship panel, and we're going to use constraints. And in the most case, I think we can do almost all of this with mates. We may use this one here too. It's called a flush. So there are different types here, but for this little activity, we're just going to stay on the first type, which is a mate, and then this is the mate, and this is the flush. So both from the mate family. A mate, what they're showing here in this picture, are two faces pointing each other that'll be stuck together. So I want this face to kind of get glued to the face around the side here. So I'm going to choose that. I'm going to rotate my view cube, and then I'm going to choose that face. I'm going to hit apply, and then I'm going to close it so that I can move my mouse. Oh, it's kind of okay. I want to show you what happened. If I have to close that menu to be able to click on a part and try to move it. Okay, and this is a little hard that this is not grounded yet, but basically it almost looks like they're not mated. But if I look at them from the side, I will see that they actually do have to stay mated along that surface, but it still slides up and down relative to each other, and they still can slide this way. So I need to do create some other relationships. Okay. Let's deal with maybe the up and down part. Okay, and this is where the flushes may come in handy. Basically, I want the bottom of the truss side and the bottom of this rail to always be in plane with each other. So they're both pointing down, so this is where we would say, I want them to be flush. Both point out the same direction, but kind of be a smooth, flat finish across there. So I'm going to choose those two, hit apply, and now they're flushed. I also want the same thing with the ends, and because I just accepted that one, if I leave this menu open, I can go right into selecting my next two faces to flush. So I'll flush the end of the rail with the end of the truss, apply, and it's ready for me to keep going. So I'll move over to the other pair. I'm going to flush the end with this end. How about we flush the bottoms? Now I did this one kind of out of order. So those things are flushed, so they have to stay kind of aligned, but this doesn't actually have to pull over and be glued to it right now. So it still would be able to be pulled apart. So that's where I want to use the mate to actually make it slide over and be stuck to the side. So that face, I have to rotate so I can access that other side of that truss. Zoom out and zoom back in. Right here, that side. Apply and close. So now my trusses have those, this became kind of one assembly basically. It's like a little sub-assembly now. This acts as one piece because those are constrained to each other. All right, so now I can begin constraining these truss pieces to the deck. All right, so the underside of the deck, I'll go choose, is going to mate with the top of this deck rail. All right, that'll kind of get it in plane. I know it's not orientated right, but it's okay. I'm going to repeat for the other side as well, the other truss. So the underside of the deck with the top of the deck rail. Apply, and we'll close it so we can see what happened. Okay, pick the lighting on the direction I'm facing. Sometimes it doesn't always snap in the direction you want. Okay, based on kind of the Inventor where it's imagining a lighting source, it can look different. Okay, so this makes it look like it can move all around, but it's actually moving really only backwards and kind of forwards relative to that deck. It's not moving up and down. So if I'm on a more orthographic view and then you're trying to move, you can see I can't drag it up or down. It's only going this way, and it's also going this way. But when you're in an isometric view, it's kind of hard to tell that that's what it's doing, that it's really only this and this. It can give the illusion that it's going up when it really was just kind of sliding back and over. Okay, so they're at the right height, but they're not in the right orientation. That'll be fixed if we mate the side of the deck to the side of this rail. And it really doesn't matter which one I do, like to bring around. Maybe I can do this one because I can see both of them. So if I choose constrain, and we're going to be on mate, basically I want this side right here, because remember the deck's going to be on top of that rail. So it's going to sit on top of here. I want the edge of it to mate also with the truss. So I want that face to mate with this edge. When I create this relationship, the truss is going to have to rotate around 90 degrees to make this happen. I'll apply. There you go. So let's repeat for the other side. Using the corners of your view cube sometimes is a fast way to kind of get the views you want. So that side of the rail and the side of the truss, that rotated, I'll hit apply and close it so I can test. And I can see that now it's kind of right on the level. They're mated, but it still slides, and we don't want these to slide. We want them to stop. So this is where maybe flushing on the ends would be helpful. So I'll go constrain and go to flush, and I will flush that little flat piece with that, and I need to do it on both. So again, the end of the deck with the little flat end of the truss. Now, because the deck was grounded, if I've fully constrained these pieces to the deck, they become fully stuck. So now I'll left click, hold, and drag. I can't move anything. It is fully constrained in place. Okay? So we're going to repeat kind of what we just saw and learned with just the other tops. Let's see, I've got top middle. So I'm going to be faster here just to finish it off. And I've got top ends. I had those little pieces, 2 of them. All right, so, hit the wrong button. So I just have to think about what's going to mate where. So I'm going to mate like a side to a side. I'm going to flush one side to be a top. It doesn't really matter. It can rotate either way still, so that'll be my top of the truss. And then I just need this to kind of shade a slide all the way down. Okay, now this is one where, you know, it can be harder to know because this is angled, right? Well, you can use, with the mates, you can use edges, lines, instead of faces. That's a face. You can see the whole perimeter is red, and I get kind of a different icon at the end of my arrow versus right here. Okay, so notice the difference between that, like, basically plus line with an arrow coming off of it, kind of shows a surface or face, versus this is an edge. So I want that edge, basically I want this to slide until that edge would be along that plane. Right now, this line would be not in plane with this. So if I make that line be mated to this plane, this will have to slide this way to make that happen. So I'm going to choose the edge and then this face and apply. And it should be fully constrained. I can try to move it. It's not moving for me. Okay, so that is the basic idea, and we're going to finish off these last ones. So let's mate that to that. Let's flush that to that. Kind of drag this so I can see. And in this case, these 2 pieces are going to interfere with each other. Inventor lets things pass through each other like ghosts, but I would need to kind of create a constraint where they're not doing that. This is hard to give you an angle. I can, let me see. Nope, the wrong thing was selected. I'm going to hide the visibility of that truss so that you can see this, hopefully. You can see that piece. So I don't want this to be in here, right, passing through. That's impossible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have that edge, kind of where these two lines come together, there's that edge that's coming towards me or away from me right there at that corner. I want that edge to be coplanar with this plane. So I'm going to do a constraint. It's going to be a mate again. And I'll tilt it a little bit so I can actually see the edge. And I want that edge, if I can get it. Just wanting to choose a plane. Yeah. I think I'll spin around. There you go. That edge made it to that plane. And now I have no interference. No, I don't have two parts trying to take up the exact same space. So that would be a problem. So let's mate that to that. Let's flush that to that to get an angle. And then lastly, we'll mate that edge to this face. I'm going to take this truss that's grayed out. That's the one where I had right-clicked and I had found the word visibility and unchecked it. So I'm going to recheck it. It'll bring it back in view. And there you go. I have an assembled bridge. So hopefully you guys are able to walk through that yourselves.